She tried to break me, then I whispered, "You're beautiful." The galaxy did not expect the compliment to start a war. It expected blood. The warship Resolute Dawn drifted in silence between two dying stars. Their light bled across the hull like fading fire, painting the ship in red and gold shadows. Every major empire was watching. Billions of eyes followed the live broadcast. This was not just a duel. This was a verdict. At the center of the arena stood Lieutenant Elias Vance, humanity's chosen representative. He looked painfully human. Bruised ribs, torn sleeve, sweat on his brow. Around him towered Corel warriors, built for combat, bred for victory. Each one could crush him without effort. And across from him stood Commander Zyra. She was legend. 12 campaigns, 0 defeats, entire rebellions ended by her hand. Her armor flowed across her body like living metal. Her glowing blue eyes showed no fear, no anger, no emotion at all. To the Corel, emotion was weakness. To them, compassion was disease. This duel would decide Earth's future. If Elias won, humanity would enter the Galactic Accord as equals. If he lost, Earth would become a protectorate. A protectorate did not mean safety. It meant ownership. The signal tone echoed. Zyra moved. No warning, no hesitation. One blink, Elias was airborne. The next, he crashed into the arena floor so hard, the metal rang like a bell. Pain shot through his spine. His lungs forgot how to breathe. Before he could even gasp, her knee pinned his chest. Her hand locked both his wrists with perfect precision. 3 seconds. The human balcony fell silent. This was supposed to be a contest. Instead, it was an execution. Alien commanders turned away already discussing Earth's surrender terms. Some did not even bother to watch the end. It was predictable. Zyra leaned closer. Her face hovered inches from his. Victory burned in her eyes like cold fire. Elias felt her strength. He felt the weight of defeat pressing into his ribs. He could not overpower her, but humans had never survived by being the strongest. They survived by refusing to play fair. He looked into her eyes, really looked. Beyond the armor, beyond the title, beyond the weapon she had been trained to be. And without a plan, without permission, without fear, he whispered, "You're beautiful." The universe stopped. Zyra froze. Her grip did not tighten. It did not loosen. It simply stopped. The arena fell into a silence so deep it felt physical. The Corel language had no word for beauty spoken as admiration. To them, appearance meant function, efficiency, structural perfection. But his voice carried something else: respect, honesty, wonder. "You attempt distraction," Zyra said quietly, but her tone had changed. It was no longer certain. Elias winced through the pain and gave a weak smile. "No," he whispered, "I just think someone should tell you." No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not enemy, not ally, not subordinate. As a person. Her knee lifted slowly from his chest. A ripple of whispers spread through the arena. Corel officers shifted in visible discomfort. This was not dominance. This was not victory. This was confusion. "You are defeated," Zyra said, stepping back. Elias stayed on the ground for a moment longer than necessary. Physically, yeah, probably. A few humans almost laughed, then remembered their species might be enslaved in the next 5 minutes. Zyra extended her hand. The arena gasped. Corel warriors did not help defeated opponents stand. Elias stared at her hand like it was a loaded weapon. Then he took it. She lifted him effortlessly. "You fight poorly," she said. "I fight differently," he replied. Her glowing eyes studied him with a new intensity. Not anger, not contempt. Curiosity. And that frightened the alien observers more than any weapon. In the strategist chamber, analysts replayed the duel again and again. Every angle, every heartbeat, every breath. "Explain," the high strategist demanded. Zyra stood motionless. "He did not resist with force," she said. "He resisted with perception." The strategist's eyes narrowed. Clarify. He introduced uncertainty. The chamber went cold. Human history flooded to holographic screens. Guerrilla warfare fought with jokes and graffiti. Soldiers writing poetry in trenches. Music playing in the ruins of destroyed cities. They were fragile. They were emotional. They were impossible to predict. In the human quarters, Elias sat alone, ribs screaming with every breath. Ambassador Myra entered quietly. "You lost," she said. "Yes." "You destabilized the entire negotiation." He gave a small shrug. "They expect fear," he said softly. "They expect anger, resistance, hate." He looked out the viewport at the dying stars. "They don't expect appreciation." Far across the ship, Zyra stood before a reflective alloy wall. "You're beautiful." The words replayed again and again. Her empire had conquered systems, broken civilizations, never hesitated. Yet 2 human words shook her more than war. She analyzed the feeling carefully. It was not weakness. It was unfamiliar. And unfamiliar things could not be controlled. Across alien communication networks, emergency reports spread. Human behavior, destabilizing. Human influence, growing. Human threat level, undefined. Undefined was the worst category. Weapons could be measured. Fleets could be counted. Undefined things changed the future. At the observation deck, Elias stood alone, staring into the dying stars. The light painted his face in gold and shadow. He heard footsteps behind him. Zyra. She stood at a respectful distance. "You knew you would lose," she said. "Yes." "Then why accept the duel?" I thought for a moment. "Because humans don't measure victory the same way." She studied him carefully. "And how do humans measure it?" He looked back at the stars. "By what changes after we fall." The answer hung between them. Heavy. Unavoidable. For the first time in recorded Corel history, Commander Zyra did not have a response. And across the galaxy, a new fear spread through ancient empires. Not fear of human weapons, not fear of human strength, fear of human influence. Because influence did not obey rules, and humans had just proven something no empire wanted to admit. They could lose the battle and still change the war that didn't follow the rules. The galaxy prepared for retaliation. Instead, it got hesitation. And hesitation frightened empires more than war. 3 hours after the duel, the warship Resolute Dawn should have exploded into violence. Every historical record predicted it. Every alien strategist expected humanity to be isolated, pressured, and forced to submission. But nothing happened. The ship remained silent. Too silent. Corel officers moved through the corridors like shadows. No one celebrated Zyra's victory. No one mocked the humans. The duel replayed on every screen, but no one focused on the slam. They focused on the whisper, "You're beautiful." Alien linguists ran translation models thousands of times. The words carried no threat, no coded signal, no biological manipulation. It was simply admiration. And yet it changed behavior. That was unacceptable. In the high strategy chamber, the council gathered under dim light. Holographic projections floated in the air. Probability charts, psychological maps, human cultural archives. The high strategist spoke first. Assessment. An analyst stepped forward, voice steady but uneasy. Human Lieutenant Elias Bance introduced an emotional variable during a dominance ritual. The result was commander hesitation. "That is weakness," another officer snapped. Zyra spoke without raising her voice. "No, it is disruption." The chamber stilled. She replayed the duel in slow motion. The moment Elias looked into her eyes, the shift in her breathing, the microsecond pause. "He was defeated physically," Zyra said, "yet he altered the outcome." The strategist narrowed his gaze. "How?" "He changed the battlefield." Silence followed, because the battlefield was not physical. It was psychological. Human archives filled the chamber. Guerrilla wars fought with jokes and graffiti, soldiers writing poetry in trenches, cities destroyed and rebuilt with music playing in the ruins. "They adapt emotionally," Zyra continued.
They convert fear into creativity. That is inefficiency, an officer argued. That is survival, and no one could deny it. Across the ship, the human delegation expected punishment. Ambassador Myra stood by the observation window, watching alien fighters patrol outside. Her hands were steady, but her eyes were not. "They're waiting," she whispered. Elias leaned against the wall, ribs wrapped in bandages. "For what?" he asked. "For us to panic." He gave a tired smile. "We won't." Myra turned sharply. "We lost the duel." "Yeah, but we didn't lose the moment." She studied him like he was a puzzle she didn't want to solve. "You gambled everything on a compliment." "No," he said. "I gambled on curiosity." Outside, the stars burnt quietly.
Not defeated, surprised. Silence filled the deck. Elias extended his hand, her eyes locked onto it. Corel warriors did not accept assistance from weaker species. The rule was absolute. Strength stood alone. Her mind ran calculations. Protocol demanded refusal. Curiosity demanded acceptance. After a long pause, she took his hand. He pulled her up. The universe did not explode, but something just as powerful changed. "You engineered imbalance," she said. "Welcome to human strategy," Elias replied. She studied him closely. "You create opportunity from error." "Most of our history is error," he said. "We just get good at using it." That answer stayed with her. Hours later, the Corel Council erupted in outrage. "Commander Zyra accepted assistance from a defeated human," an officer reported. "That violates dominance code," another snapped. Zyra stood in the center of the chamber, unmoved. "Or," she said calmly, "it redefines it." The room fell silent. She activated a projection. The training footage filled the air. Every stumble, every reversal, every laugh in the middle of combat. "She weaponizes unpredictability," she said. "Not to dominate, to evolve." "That is weakness," someone argued. "No," Zyra replied. "It is adaptation at speed." The high strategist leaned forward. "And what does that make humans?" She didn't hesitate. "Dangerous. Not because they were strong, because they changed too fast to measure." In the human quarters, Elias was being interrogated by Ambassador Myra. "You sparred with the Corel commander?" she demanded. She asked nicely. "That is not the point." He winced, stretching his ribs. "She's trying to understand us." "That is exactly the problem," Myra said. "Empires don't study prey. They study threats." Elias leaned back. "Good." Myra stared at him. "You want them afraid?" "No," he said quietly. "I want them curious." Far above, Zyra stood alone in her chamber. She replayed the training match in silence. Every human movement violated Corel combat logic. And yet, it worked. Her terminal blinked again. "Incoming message, Elias." She opened it cautiously. "Dinner still stands. No punching this time." She didn't understand why the message made her pause longer than it should. Sharing food with an enemy was not combat. It was exposure. And exposure created influence. Across alien intelligence networks, alerts spread faster than fleets. Human adaptability escalating. Cultural contamination risk rising. Commander influence unstable. Empires feared invasion. They had never considered infection. On the observation deck, Elias waited beside the stars. He didn't turn when Zyra approached. He already knew she would come. "You risk much," she said. "So do you," he replied. "Why continue?" He looked at her. "Because humans don't win by overpowering enemies." He gestured to the endless galaxy. "We win by changing them." For the first time, Zyra felt something shift inside her understanding. Not loyalty, not weakness, possibility. And possibility was more dangerous than war, because war ended. Possibility spread. Across the galaxy, ancient empires began running new calculations. Humanity was not invading. Humanity was evolving outward. And evolution could not be stopped with weapons, only with extinction. And suddenly, extinction seemed harder than anyone expected. The enemy that was watching.
The attack did not begin with weapons. It began with silence. At exactly 0217 ship time, every star outside the Resolute Dawn disappeared. 1 second, the galaxy burned bright beyond the observation glass. The next, darkness swallowed everything. No explosions, no alarms. Just a sudden absence of light so complete it felt like the universe had closed its eyes. Across the ship, soldiers froze. Engineers stared at their screens. The stars were not gone. Sensors still detected them. But something massive blocked the view. Something enormous. Then the alarm screamed. "Unknown fleet entering system!" The words echoed through every corridor. On the command deck, holographic projections burst alive. A wall of ships emerged from slipspace. Black, angular, silent. They moved in perfect formation, like a blade cutting through reality itself. Ambassador Myra felt her breath catch. "Identification," she demanded. A technician swallowed hard. Vorath Dominion. The name spread through the deck like a virus. The Vorath did not negotiate. They erased. Ancient records described them as a civilization that hunted rising powers before they could mature. They believed evolution was a disease. Any species that adapted too fast had to be eliminated. And humanity had just announced itself to the galaxy. The Corel Bridge reacted instantly. Warriors armed themselves. Defensive formations lit the screens. Standard doctrine activated. Protect strength. Sacrifice weakness. Human sectors of the ship were automatically marked as expendable. Commander Zyra stared at the display. Her officers waited for the command. Seal the human compartments. Use them as shields. Abandon them if necessary. That was how empires survived. Her hand hovered over the command console. Then she spoke. "Open joint tactical channel with the humans." The bridge went silent. An officer hesitated. "Commander, that violates—" "Do it." On the human deck, Elias and Myra watched the enemy fleet advance like a storm. "They're not here to talk," Myra whispered. Elias nodded. "They're here because they're scared." She turned to him sharply. "Scared of what?" He looked at the fleet. "Us." A signal flashed. Corel Joint Command Channel. Myra's eyes widened. "That's new." Zyra appeared on the screen. Her voice was calm, precise. "The Vorath Dominion classifies humanity as an evolutionary threat. Their objective is extermination." Elias leaned closer to the console. "That feels rude. This is not humor. It's how we think." For half a second, she studied him. The Vorath fleet outnumbered them 3-1. Victory was impossible by traditional metrics. Then Elias spoke again. "Don't fight them the normal way." Zyra's eyes narrowed. "Clarify. Let us break their expectations." The Vorath ships advance in perfect geometry. Their strategy was ancient and brutal. Overwhelm, disable, erase. No creativity, no hesitation. Pure execution. Human engineers moved fast. A young technician shouted out, "We can't outgun them, but we can confuse them." Myra spun toward him. "How?" "We turn our civilian satellites into signal ghosts. Fake fleets, phantom weapon locks. Make their sensors lie." A Corel officer scoffed over the channel. "Deception is temporary." Elias shook his head. "No, momentum is permanent." Zyra made the decision. Authorize human maneuver. Within minutes, the battlefield transformed. Human satellites screamed noise into space. False fleets bloomed across enemy scanners. Phantom ships appeared and vanished. Gravity readings contradicted themselves. On the Vorath flagship, commanders stared in disbelief. "Their numbers are multiplying. That is impossible. They are altering the battlefield mid-engagement." Meanwhile, Corel warships adjusted their attacks to follow the chaos. Precision strikes hit confused targets. Formation lines cracked. For the first time in centuries, the Vorath hesitated. And hesitation killed. Elias's voice cut through the channel. "Commander, we're about to do something slightly insane." Zyra didn't blink. "Clarify. We overload one cruiser's jump core. It won't explode. It'll ripple space, push their formation apart. Risk probability, catastrophic. Success probability, uncertain. Very human odds." Zyra gave the order anyway. The human cruiser Arcadia accelerated directly into the enemy formation. Vorath cannons charged. Every prediction said the ship would die. Instead, space twisted. Not violently, unpredictably. A ripple spread like a shockwave through reality. Enemy ships drifted off alignment, their perfect geometry shattered. Weapons fired into empty void. And in that broken second, Corel guns struck. Human fighters slipped through impossible gaps. Chaos became a weapon. 20 minutes later, the Vorath fleet retreated. Not destroyed, but shaken. Silence returned to the battlefield. Combined human and Corel ships floated together, alive, and evolving. Somewhere far away, the Vorath Dominion recalculated. And for the first time in their history, they added a new category to their threat index. Not strongest, not largest, most dangerous. Human. The fear humanity created. The galaxy did not celebrate the victory. It panicked. No empire cheered when the Vorath fleet retreated. No alliance declared peace. Instead, emergency councils lit up across hundreds of systems. Leaders who had not spoken in decades suddenly opened direct channels. Because the battle proved something worse than invasion. It proved humanity could change outcomes. And change was more dangerous than war. On the Corel capital world, the high strategist stood before a wall of projections. Every simulation spun in red. Every model ended the same way. Human influence expanding. Human unpredictability spreading. Human alliances multiplying. An analyst spoke carefully. If they continue adapting at this—
Back aboard the Resolute Dawn, the mood was no better. The ship was alive, but uneasy. Carol warriors walked beside human officers now, but the distance between them felt fragile. Not hatred, fear. Elias felt it in every hallway. Conversation stopped when he passed. Eyes followed him, now with anger, with calculation. Ambassador Myra pulled him into a private chamber. "You didn't just win a battle," she said quietly. "You destabilized the galaxy." He leaned against the wall. "We saved the ship." "You changed the balance of power," she corrected. "Empires survive on predictability. You removed it." Elias sighed. "We didn't invent unpredictability, we just use it." "That's what scares them," Myra whispered. Across the ship, Commander Zyra faced her own storm. The Carol Council transmitted continuously, demanding explanation after explanation. "You cooperated with humans in combat." "Yes." "You authorized non-traditional warfare." "Yes." "You risked Carol supremacy." Zyra's voice did not rise. "I ensured Carol's survival." Silence followed, because the Council could not deny the result. Without human tactics, the Vorath would have erased them. The High Strategist spoke at last. "Assessment." Zyra answered without hesitation. "Humanity is not a threat to power. They are a threat to stagnation." That word hit harder than the explosion. Accelerants did not replace fire. They made it unstoppable. Meanwhile, far beyond Carol space, the Vorath Dominion rebuilt its formation. Their commanders did not shout. They did not rage. They analyzed. "They altered engagement mathematics," one officer said. "They weaponized disorder," another replied. The Dominion Supreme Mind issued a single directive. Humanity must not mature. That was not a battle order. It was a species-level decision. Back on the observation deck, Elias stared into space when Zyra approached. This time, neither spoke for a long moment. "The galaxy fears you," she said finally. "We're used to that," Elias replied. "This fear is different." He looked at her. "How?" "You are not feared for strength. You are feared for influence." He considered that. "Good." Zyra studied him. "You welcome it?" "We've always been underestimated," he said softly. "Fear means they're paying attention." Below them, alarms did not sound, but data shifted. New transmissions flooded the ship. Dozens of empires requesting emergency negotiations. Not with Carol, with humanity. Ambassador Myra stared at the incoming signals in disbelief. "They want alliances," she whispered. Elias blinked. "Already?" "They want protection from you or partnership with you," she corrected. He laughed quietly. "That's fast." "That's survival," Myra said. Across alien networks, analysts reached the same conclusion. If humanity could destabilize empires, humanity could reshape them. And reshaping meant extinction for old powers. The fear was not that humans would conquer. The fear was that humans would change what conquest meant. In the Carroll Council chamber, voices rose again. If we allow human expansion, an officer argued, dominance loses meaning. The high strategist turned to Zyra. Assessment. She looked at the holographic image of Elias standing among the stars. Then she answered, humanity is not a threat to power. They are a threat to stagnation. No one had worse to fight that, because stagnation was how empires died, slowly, quietly, inevitably. And humans accelerated everything. On the human deck, Elias finally understood the scale of what they had started. Messages stacked endlessly, offers, warnings, requests, threats disguised as diplomacy. He whispered to Myra, we didn't just survive, did we? She shook her head slowly. No. We changed the conversation. Outside the ship, the galaxy moved differently now. Old empires tightened borders, young civilizations reached outward, alliances shifted like tectonic plates, all because one species refused to fight normally. And somewhere in the darkness, the Vorath prepared a second wave, not to defeat humanity, to erase the idea of them, because ideas were harder to kill than fleets. And humanity had become an idea, the most dangerous kind, one that promised evolution. The war against an idea. The assassination attempt did not target a person. It targeted a conversation. The explosion tore through the diplomatic chamber seconds before the meeting began. A silent flash, a shockwave that folded the air inward. The table where human and alien delegates were supposed to sit vanished in a sphere of light. Emergency shields slammed down too late. Smoke filled the hall. Security forces rushed in with weapons raised, expecting invasion. There was none. Only a message burned into the ruined floor in alien script. Stop human expansion. Across the ship, panic spread faster than fire. Ambassador Myra stood frozen outside the chamber, staring at the wreckage. She had been delayed by 30 seconds. 30 seconds saved her life. Elias arrived moments later, breathless. That was meant for all of us, he whispered. No, Myra said quietly. It was meant for what we represent. Because humanity was no longer a species in this war. Humanity was a direction, and someone wanted it erased. Within minutes, accusations exploded across diplomatic channels. Smaller empires blamed the Carroll. Carroll commanders blamed anti-human factions. Old rivals used the chaos to threaten border strikes. The galaxy did not fracture slowly. It cracked instantly. On the Carroll Bridge, Commander Zyro watched emergency reports stack like falling stars. Multiple systems mobilizing fleets, trade routes collapsing, alliances dissolving. This is not an attack, an officer muttered. This is ignition. Zyra understood. Someone wanted empires fighting each other instead of adapting. And humanity was the spark. The high strategist appeared on the channel. Assessment. Zyra answered immediately. Humanity is being weaponized. By whom? She looked at the burning chamber feed. Anyone who fears change. Across the ship, Elias sat with human engineers and diplomats in a sealed room. The air smelled like smoke and adrenaline. They're not trying to kill us, he said. They're trying to kill the idea of cooperation. Myra nodded slowly. If the galaxy believes humans bring chaos, alliances collapse, we become a symbol of instability. Then we prove the opposite, Elias said. How? Someone asked. He stood. We hold the meeting anyway. The room stared at him. In the same chamber, Myra whispered. In the same place, same table, Elias replied. Silence followed. It was insane, which meant it was human. When the announcement spread, the galaxy paused. Human delegation refusing evacuation, meeting continuing as planned. Some called it bravery, others called it suicide, but everyone watched. The repaired chamber was still scarred, metal twisted, walls blackened. The burned warning remained visible under a thin glass shield. Delegates entered cautiously. Carroll warriors stood beside human guards. Old enemies sat at the same table. Not comfortably, but intentionally. Elias walked in last. He placed his hands on the table. No speeches, no threats. He looked around the room. You tried to scare us apart.
He tapped the glass over the burned message. It didn't work. No one interrupted, because the truth was heavy. If humanity is dangerous, Elias continued quietly, it's not because we fight. It's because we connect. That word hit harder than the explosion. Connection. Empires survive by separation. Humans survive by bridges. Zyra stepped forward. The Carol Empire stands with humanity. Gasps rippled through the chamber. That sentence rewrote centuries of doctrine. One by one, other delegates spoke.
Not loyalty, not surrender. Alignment. Not with humans, with the future. Far away, hidden in dark space, the faction that ordered the attack watched the broadcast. Their leader crushed the metal rail in frustration. "They are spreading faster after the strike," an officer whispered. "Because you attacked them," the leader hissed. "You made them a martyr before they died." He stared at the screen where humans and aliens sat together in open defiance. "We cannot kill them now." "Then what?" The leader's voice turned cold. "We erase the battlefield." Back on the ship, Zyra stood beside Elias as the meeting ended. The chamber buzzed with uneasy unity. "You survived the attempt," she said. "We survived the message," he corrected. She studied the scarred room. "They will escalate." "Of course," Elias replied. "That's what fear does." Outside, fleets began moving across the galaxy, not toward Earth, not toward Corel space, toward the unknown faction hiding behind the chaos. For the first time, empires did not mobilize against humanity. They mobilized because of it. Humanity had become the center of gravity, not by force, by meaning. And meaning pulled the galaxy into motion. Zyra looked at Elias one last time. "You are aware," she said quietly, "that this is no longer diplomacy." He nodded. "This is evolution." And evolution did not ask permission. It happened. Whether empires liked it or not. The day the galaxy changed. The final weapon was not aimed at a ship. It was aimed at reality. Sensors screamed across the galaxy at the same time. Stars flickered. Trade routes vanished. Entire navigation grids collapsed into static. It was not an explosion. It was subtraction. Space itself was being erased. The unknown faction revealed its last strategy. If humanity could not be controlled, then the battlefield itself would be removed. No space meant no fleets, no alliances, no future. Only silence. On the bridge of the Resolute Dawn, officers stared at the projections in horror. A dark wound spread across a star map, eating distance. Systems near the tear blinked out one by one. "They're collapsing slip space," an analyst whispered. "If it reaches core routes, interstellar travel dies." Not a defeat, a permanent cage. Empires would survive, but trapped inside their own borders. Forever. Zyra stood frozen for 1 second. Then she moved. "Open full channel. All fleets." Across the galaxy, leaders appeared in holographic light. Enemies stood beside allies. Old wars forgotten under a greater threat. The high strategist spoke first. "Options?" Silence answered. There was no military solution. You could not shoot a hole in reality. Elias stepped forward into the projection. "Then we don't fight it," he said. Every gaze turned toward the human. "We change it." Zyra's eyes narrowed. "Explain." He pointed at the spreading darkness. "They're removing structure. We respond with connection." No one understood, so he did what humans always did. He translated hope into action. "All fleets," Elias ordered, "link navigation cores, synchronize gravitational anchors, build a shared grid." An officer blinked. "That would connect every empire's infrastructure into one system." "Yes," Elias said. "If we stand alone, the tear wins. If we stand together, space holds." The chamber shook with hesitation. This was unthinkable. Empires did not share foundations. Foundations were power. Zyra looked at the map.
Another star vanished. Time decision was over. Carrel fleet linking, she said. One sentence. A century of doctrine shattered. Others followed. One by one. Reluctant. Terrified. Committed. Across the galaxy, engines hummed in harmony. Navigation systems that once competed now synchronized. Gravitational anchors locked together like a chain across the stars. The darkness hit the network and stopped. Not destroyed, held. Reality trembled like stretched glass. Every ship groaned. Every engine screamed. If one link failed, the tear would surge forward. Elias stood gripping the console. Hold, he whispered. Just hold. Human ships were the weakest in the chain. They felt the pressure first. Metal bent. Lights flickered. Myra grabbed his arm. We're breaking. We're bending, he said through clenched teeth. Humans are good at bending. Across the grid, Carrel battleships reinforced the line. Smaller empires poured power into the network. Old rivals supported each other without speaking. The darkness shrank. Not fast, not clean, but enough. Enough could prove something impossible. Unity was stronger than erasure. The unknown faction watched their weapon fail. Their leader whispered in disbelief. They're cooperating, as if the word itself was alien. The tear collapsed inward. The stars returned. Silence followed. Not the silence of fear, the silence after a storm. On every bridge in the galaxy, crews stared at the restored map. They were still alive, still connected. And something else had changed. They had touched each other's foundations. They could never pretend separation again. On the observation deck, Elias and Zyra stood side by side. No alarms, no fleets, just stars. You forced empires to share their strength, she said. No, he replied softly. They chose to. She studied the galaxy. For survival. For growth, Elias corrected. A long pause stretched between them. You have rewritten power, Zyra said. He smiled faintly. We rewrote fear. Because fear had demanded isolation, humanity answered with connection. Across the galaxy, messages spread faster than fleets. Not warnings, not threats, invitations, trade offers, cultural exchanges, joint research. The idea of humanity was no longer dangerous. It was contagious, and no one wanted the cure. Zyra turned to Elias one last time. You were defeated in the duel, she said. Yes. And yet, she continued, this species won. He looked at the stars. Humans don't win by standing above others, he said quietly. We win by standing with them. For the first time in her life, the Carrel commander understood beauty the way humans did. Not structure, not perfection, possibility. Far beyond them, ancient empires updated their histories, not as a war, not as a conquest, as the day the galaxy changed direction. Because one fragile species refused to fight alone, and in doing so, taught the universe how to survive together. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon for more amazing videos.